The sun had just begun to rise over the wide fields when she stepped out of her small farmhouse. The morning air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of damp earth and freshly turned soil. She paused for a moment at the edge of the porch, taking a deep breath and listening to the quiet symphony of life waking up around her. Birds chirped in the distance, and somewhere near the fence a rooster crowed, announcing the start of another day. Life on the farm was peaceful, almost too peaceful at times, but she had learned to appreciate these small moments of calm. Her hands were rough from years of hard work, but they moved with a practiced ease as she grabbed a metal bucket and headed toward the chicken coop. The chickens, sensing their morning meal, began to cluck excitedly and flap their wings as she approached. She smiled, reaching in to collect the eggs, her fingers deftly handling each one so they wouldn't crack. It was a simple task, but it grounded her, reminded her of the rhythm of life, and gave her a sense of purpose. Life on a farm demanded attention to the smallest details, and she had long since learned to embrace that discipline. Her son, still rubbing sleep from his eyes, appeared behind her, his small bare feet silent on the wooden porch. He yawned widely, wrapping his arms around himself for warmth as he watched her work. She looked back at him and offered a warm smile. "Breakfast in a few minutes," she said softly. "Go wash up and I'll get you something warm." He nodded, disappearing back into the house, leaving her to finish her morning chores. As she went about her routine, there was a sense of pride in the work she did. She tended her garden with care, inspecting each row of vegetables, pulling out weeds and checking for any signs of disease or pests. Each plant was like a small victory, a reminder that life could thrive with attention and care. Her farm wasn't large or fancy, but it was hers, and she had poured her heart into it. She knew the value of independence, the freedom that came from being able to provide for herself and her son without relying on anyone else. That independence was hard-won and cherished, and she protected it fiercely. Her mornings often followed this pattern, a blend of routine and quiet reflection. She moved from task to task, feeding animals, checking fences, collecting eggs, and tending the garden. The physical labor was demanding, but it kept her strong and sharp. Her mind, too, remained active, always alert to changes in the environment, always noticing things others might overlook. Years of discipline had trained her senses to pick up on subtle cues: a snapped twig, a disturbed patch of earth, the faint sound of movement in the distance. On the surface, she appeared as just another farmer, but beneath that quiet exterior was someone who had learned to observe, to anticipate, and to act with precision when necessary. The sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the fields, and she paused for a moment to wipe the sweat from her brow. She leaned against the fence, scanning the horizon with a careful eye. The farm was peaceful, yes, but the world outside these fields was not always kind. She had learned that the hard way. Life had thrown challenges at her, ones she had met head-on with determination and skill. Those experiences had shaped her into someone capable, resourceful, and resilient. The farm was her sanctuary, a place where she could create a sense of stability and safety for her son, away from the uncertainties that lurked beyond the property line. Her son returned, now washed and dressed, and she called him over to help with feeding the animals. He carried the smaller buckets with a sense of pride, eager to contribute and to feel involved in the routines that defined their lives. She guided him patiently, showing him how to scatter feed for the chickens, how to check the water troughs, and how to make sure the animals were safe and comfortable. It was a teaching moment, but also a bonding one. She wanted him to understand the value of hard work, responsibility and care, not just for the animals, but for the life they were building together. After the animals were tended to, they moved toward the garden. She handed him a small hoe and watched as he mimicked her movements, awkward at first, but gradually more confident. She smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest that came from seeing him learn, grow, and thrive. The farm was more than just a source of food and income. It was a classroom, a playground, and a foundation for a life built on independence, self-reliance, and respect for the world around them. The work continued until the sun was high in the sky. Sweat dripped from her forehead and her arms ached from the labor, but she felt a sense of accomplishment that no other feeling could match. She glanced at her son, who was now digging enthusiastically in the soil, and a small laugh escaped her. Despite the challenges of single motherhood, despite the weight of responsibility, she felt gratitude. They were safe, they had each other, and they had the farm, a place that belonged to them and them alone. By late morning, she stepped back to survey the progress. Everything was in order. The animals were fed and content, the garden was tended, and the fences were secure. She allowed herself a moment of rest, sitting on the edge of the porch with a cool drink of water. Her eyes wandered over the landscape, taking in the rolling fields, the neat rows of crops, and the sturdy fences that marked the boundaries of their home. There was a sense of peace in the order she had created, a harmony between effort and result. She knew this peace was fragile, something that had to be earned and maintained every day, but she also knew that she was more than capable of protecting it. The sound of an approaching vehicle broke the quiet. She looked up instinctively, her body tensing for just a moment before she relaxed. It was a neighbor, coming down the dusty road to borrow some tools. She waved and he waved back, exchanging a few friendly words. In these rural communities, neighbors watched out for each other, shared advice, and offered help when needed. She valued these connections, though she also valued her privacy. The farm was her world, her sanctuary, and she protected it with the same vigilance that guided every other aspect of her life. As the neighbor drove away, she returned to the tasks at hand. There was always something to do on a farm, and she welcomed the work because it kept her mind engaged and her body strong. She checked the water levels in the small pond, inspected the edges of the property for any signs of intrusion, and made mental notes about repairs that would need attention later in the week. Her mind never rested completely. There was always awareness, always vigilance. Years of discipline and training had ingrained this into her very being. It was part of who she was, even if few people outside her immediate life ever suspected it. Her son came running up, holding a small basket of freshly picked vegetables. His face was bright with excitement, and she couldn't help but smile at his enthusiasm. "Look what I found," he exclaimed, showing her a perfectly ripe tomato and a handful of green beans. She knelt down beside him, examining the produce with him and offering gentle praise. These were the moments she cherished, the simple joys of life shared with someone she loved deeply. They were the rewards for all the effort, the long hours, and the relentless work that went into maintaining the farm. Lunch was a modest affair, simple sandwiches and fresh fruit from their garden. They ate on the porch, enjoying the warmth of the sun and the gentle breeze that rustled through the trees. Conversation was light, filled with laughter and questions about what they would do later in the day. She listened attentively, valuing his thoughts and feelings, nurturing his sense of curiosity and confidence. It was in these small everyday moments that she felt her purpose most strongly. Raising a child who was not only safe and cared for but also strong, independent and capable. The afternoon brought more work. She repaired a section of the fence that had weakened over the winter, tightened loose boards, and reinforced the gates. Her son helped when he could, though he was soon drawn to other projects, exploring the farm and learning by observation. She watched him, her heart swelling with pride and love. Each day was an opportunity to teach, to guide, and to nurture. She took that responsibility seriously, knowing that the lessons she imparted now would shape the person he would become. As the day drew on, the sky began to change, colors shifting from bright blue to softer shades of gold and pink. She paused once more, taking in the view, feeling a quiet satisfaction at the life she had built. It wasn't easy, and it hadn't been handed to her on a silver platter. Every inch of this farm, every crop, every fence, every small victory had come from her own hands, her own determination, and her own skill. And though the world beyond these fields could be unpredictable and sometimes dangerous, she felt ready for whatever challenges might come. She had faced difficult times before, and she had always prevailed. As evening approached, she began preparing dinner, her son helping as best he could. The smell of cooking filled the house, a comforting aroma that spoke of home, safety, and family. They ate together, shared stories about the day, and planned for tomorrow. The rhythm of life on the farm continued, steady and reassuring. And as night fell, she stepped outside one last time, looking up at the stars that blanketed the sky. There was a sense of calm, but also of readiness. The farm was her home, her sanctuary, and she would protect it with every ounce of strength and skill she possessed. The days passed in their usual rhythm, calm and steady. She continued tending the farm, working with her son to keep the animals fed, the garden thriving, and the fences strong. Yet beneath the surface of this peaceful life, a subtle tension began to stir. She noticed it first one evening as the sun dipped low, and shadows stretched across the fields. They were faint signs that something was not right. A branch snapped too loudly, or a shadow moved just slightly off where it should have been. Her eyes, trained from years of attention and discipline, noticed these things immediately. But no one else would have. She didn't panic. Panic never served anyone well. Instead, she moved carefully, observing and listening. It was easy to dismiss these moments as tricks of the light or sounds carried by the wind. But she knew better. Experience had taught her that small, seemingly insignificant details could point to much larger dangers. And in the quiet stretches of rural life, it was often the calm that allowed danger to creep in unnoticed. It started with small things. Tools went missing from the shed, then returned, but slightly out of place. Footprints appeared in the soft soil near the garden, prints that didn't match hers or her son's. Occasionally, she thought she saw someone in the distance just beyond the edge of the trees, watching. They never approached during the day, never made any sound, but the feeling of being observed settled heavily on her shoulders. One afternoon, as she worked to repair a section of the fence, she noticed tire tracks along the dirt road that ran past the farm. They were deep, wide, and fresh. Someone had been here recently. The tracks led around the edge of her property before disappearing into the trees. She crouched low, examining the impressions. They were too large to belong to a single vehicle, too deliberate to be casual. A chill ran through her. These were not neighbors or travelers. This was something else, something that had intent. She didn't alarm her son. At 9 years old, he didn't need the weight of such worries on his small shoulders. Instead, she continued her work, keeping a calm exterior while her mind quietly assessed the situation. She reinforced the weaker sections of the fence, checked the locks on the barn doors, and made small adjustments to make it harder for anyone to enter unnoticed. Every movement was deliberate, a silent preparation in case what she suspected became reality. As evening fell, she stood on the porch with a cup of tea, scanning the horizon with careful eyes. The trees swayed gently in the breeze, but she felt the tension in the air. Something was coming, she was certain of it, and it would not be easy. The farm had always been a sanctuary, a place where they could live without fear. But she knew that sanctuary could be challenged. Whoever had been watching the property was testing the boundaries, looking for weakness, and she would not allow them to find it. The next morning, she began her day earlier than usual. She checked the perimeter of the farm, noting every detail. A broken branch here, a faint trail there. Each observation was a piece of the puzzle. She traced the footprints that had appeared the night before, mapping a possible path of movement. Whoever was approaching was careful, but they were leaving traces. That was a mistake, and mistakes could be costly. Her son noticed the change in her mood, the subtle alertness in her posture, the way her eyes scanned the fields more often. He didn't question her, but he watched, curious and slightly uneasy. She smiled at him, kneeling to check his shoelaces. "Everything's fine," she said softly, but there was a firmness in her tone that belied the casual words. Fine was relative. Fine meant they were prepared, aware, and ready to act if needed. Fine meant they were alive and capable of defending themselves no matter what came. By mid-afternoon, she spotted movement near the edge of the tree line. At first, it was just a shadow, shifting slightly as if testing the area. Then she saw them more clearly. A small group of figures dressed in dark clothing moving slowly and deliberately. They stayed low, avoiding open ground, clearly trying not to be seen. They were organized, confident and cautious. A gang that thought a quiet farm was an easy target. They had no idea who they were dealing with. Her heart rate did not quicken. Instead, her mind sharpened. She had been trained for situations like this, though not in a suburban field or a quiet rural farm. Her training had been in harsher environments, in places where lives depended on precision, patience, and observation. She recognized the patterns immediately. They were scouting, learning the layout, checking for weaknesses. They were assessing her, the house, and the surrounding fields. She waited, silent and hidden behind a section of the barn, observing every movement. She took note of their numbers, the way they communicated with subtle gestures, and the small weapons they carried. None of it surprised her. She had faced worse threats before, trained herself to read danger before it became obvious. She was not afraid. She was calculating. That evening, as the sun set and the shadows lengthened, she made subtle adjustments around the property. She moved items to create obstacles, placed reflective surfaces to catch light in unexpected ways, and quietly reinforced entry points. Each action was invisible to the observers, a series of silent warnings that someone was paying attention. The farm would not be an easy target. She was ready to defend it, and she knew the intruders would regret their decision if they tried. As night fell, she stayed awake longer than usual, keeping a watch from the edge of the porch. The air was cool and the sounds of the countryside filled the night. Somewhere in the distance, the faint roar of an engine hinted that someone was out there, testing the area. She did not flinch. She simply watched, listened, and waited. Patience was a weapon, and she had it in abundance. The following day brought more signs. Footprints appeared closer to the house, tire marks near the barn, and the faint scent of unfamiliar smoke drifted through the air. Whoever it was, they were getting bolder, trying to gauge the reaction of the farm's inhabitants. She remained calm, guiding her son through chores while mentally running scenarios, preparing for every possible outcome. Every detail mattered, every small clue contributed to the picture she was building. Her son asked questions, curious about the strange noises and footprints. She answered simply, explaining that sometimes people or animals wandered through the area, but always kept the explanation calm and reassuring. She did not want fear to take root in him. He needed to feel safe, even if he could not fully understand the danger that lurked nearby. She had made that choice once, long ago, to protect the ones she loved by keeping them unaware of her full capabilities until it became necessary. By late afternoon, she noticed signs that the gang had returned, this time with more coordination. They moved in small groups, communicating silently, testing the perimeter. It was clear they intended to make their move soon, to push past her defenses and take what they wanted. Most people in their situation might have panicked, called authorities, or considered abandoning the property. She did none of these things. Panic had never served her. Leaving was never an option. This was her home, her sanctuary, and she would not allow it to be violated. She spent the evening preparing carefully. Every lock was checked, every entry point reinforced, and every approach route observed. She moved with quiet efficiency, a calm authority that came from knowing exactly what to do and when. She made sure her son was safe inside, tucked away in a secure room with instructions to stay quiet and not to leave. She reassured him with gentle words and a steady presence, knowing that her calm would help him remain calm too. As night fell fully, the tension became almost tangible. The farm seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the inevitable confrontation. She stood silently in the shadows, eyes scanning the fields, ears alert to every sound. Somewhere beyond the trees, figures moved, unaware that their plans were being watched and assessed with a level of precision they could not comprehend. They thought they were approaching an easy target, a quiet single mother who could be intimidated. They were wrong. Her mind ran through every possible scenario, the number of intruders, their positions, the most effective ways to slow them, to confuse them, and to protect her son. She considered the terrain, the angles of approach, and the most effective strategies to keep them at bay without unnecessary risk. Years of training and experience had prepared her for far worse situations. But even with that knowledge, she remained vigilant, aware that every small detail mattered. She spent the night in a state of controlled readiness, never moving without purpose, always observing. Every rustle in the trees, every snap of a branch, every shift of shadow was recorded in her mind. This was the calm before the storm, a period where patience and preparation could make all the difference. She was not worried. She was ready. By the time dawn began to break, painting the sky with soft pinks and oranges, she could see them clearly again, the gang moving closer, testing the boundaries, unaware that the farm was far from defeat. Hanseless, she exhaled slowly, feeling the familiar sense of control settle in. They were approaching, yes, but she was ready. The farm, her son, and her home would not be taken without a fight, and she was prepared to give that fight with every ounce of skill, strength, and precision she possessed. The night was dark, the sky heavy with clouds that swallowed the moon, leaving only a few stars to cast faint light over the fields. The wind rustled the trees, carrying with it the faint sounds of movement from beyond the property line. She had been waiting for this moment, the one she had known was coming ever since she first noticed the signs of trespass. Her hands were steady, her senses alert, her mind running through every possible scenario. She had trained for moments like this, though not on a quiet farm in the countryside. Still, Experience taught her that the principles of preparation, patience, and precision were the same everywhere. She crouched behind the barn, her body low, eyes scanning the edges of the property. The gang had made their move. From the shadows, she could see their figures creeping forward, moving cautiously, testing the perimeter, trying to remain unseen. They were confident, arrogant even, assuming that the small farm and the single mother who lived there would be easy prey. They did not know her. They had no idea what they were about to face. Her mind worked like a machine, cataloging every detail. How many there were, their positions, their movements, the small gaps in their formation. Every sound was noted. A twig snapping under a foot. A whisper of movement through the grass, the faint clink of a tool or weapon. She had trained herself to notice these things instinctively, and now that instinct was guiding her actions. She adjusted her position slightly, ensuring that she had the best vantage point without exposing herself. Inside the house, her son slept, unaware of the danger that loomed beyond the walls. She had made sure he was safe, tucked into a secure room with clear instructions not to move, not to make noise. Her heart swelled with protective instinct, and a quiet resolve settled in her chest. No one would harm him. No one would take what was theirs. Not tonight. The gang moved closer, thinking themselves clever, thinking the darkness and distance gave them an advantage. But she had the advantage of awareness, patience, and skill honed over years of discipline. She could see the small mistakes they made, hesitating too long in the open, leaving shadows that betrayed their position, communicating with subtle gestures that revealed their intent. Every detail mattered. Every mistake could be exploited. She waited. Patience was a weapon, one of the most powerful she had. She had learned this lesson in far more dangerous situations, where acting too soon could be deadly. Now on her farm, it was the same principle. She allowed them to come closer, to make the first move, knowing that they were walking into a carefully prepared trap. Suddenly, one of them stepped on a loose board near the barn. The sound was faint, but it carried. She tensed, waiting just a moment, then moved swiftly and silently, adjusting her position to better observe the intruders. They froze, sensing something, but could not see her. The air was thick with tension. The quiet of the farm was deceptive, hiding the danger that now prepared to strike. They tried to separate, sending a few individuals to circle the house while others remained closer to the barn. This was their mistake. They assumed disorganization would make it easier to approach. She had planned for this. Using the layout of the land to her advantage, she moved silently, positioning herself where she could observe both groups, ready to respond to any sudden movement. Her hands did not shake. Her breathing was even. She was calm, focused, and entirely in control. Time seemed to stretch. The gang was patient too, but their confidence was beginning to waver. Small signs revealed their unease. Whispered words, cautious glances, hesitant movements. They had expected a quiet, easy target. They had not expected awareness, vigilance, or skill. And they certainly had not expected her. She waited for the right moment. In her mind, she ran through every possible outcome, ready for anything. She could disarm them quietly if needed, or create a distraction that would give her complete control. But above all, her priority was the safety of her son and herself. She did not want unnecessary violence, only the protection of what was hers. The first mistake came from overconfidence. One of the intruders stepped too far from the cover of the trees, his shadow stretching across the ground. It was a small moment, but it was all she needed. With silent precision, she took action, moving swiftly to intercept without being seen directly. The movement startled the intruder, causing a small commotion that alerted the others. Panic spread quickly through the group, but she remained calm, using their confusion to maintain the advantage. They tried to regroup, to communicate with gestures and whispers, but her awareness was total. Every movement, every intention was observed. She anticipated their next steps, adjusting her position to maintain control. They were operating on assumptions, thinking that a small farm and a single woman could be intimidated. She shattered those assumptions effortlessly. Despite the tension, she remained mindful of her son. Every action she took was measured, designed to neutralize the threat while minimizing risk to him. She ensured that the areas near the house remained secure, that he would remain unaware of the danger until it was entirely over. Her training had always emphasized protection above all else, and now, even in this unexpected setting, that principle guided her every move. The intruders tried to split their focus, attempting to approach from multiple directions at once. It was their second mistake. She anticipated the divide, positioning herself to maintain a clear advantage over both groups. They moved cautiously, but their caution was undermined by fear. Fear slowed them, made them hesitate, and revealed their lack of experience compared to her expertise. Time passed in a tense rhythm. The intruders realized that their plans were failing. Their confidence faltered as small setbacks multiplied. A tool dropped. A whispered command misheard, a shadow revealing their location. Every error gave her more control. She moved with precision, a silent guardian of the farm, using her skills to maintain the upper hand without unnecessary confrontation. The night air was filled with the sounds of movement, the whispers of frustrated intruders, and the occasional sharp snap of a misstep. She used these moments to reinforce her position, subtly adjusting obstacles, shifting vantage points, and ensuring that any attempt to advance would be met with immediate resistance. They had entered her domain, and she was the master of it. Eventually, the gang realized that their plan was failing. Frustration turned to panic as they realized the farm was not the easy target they had imagined. They hesitated, trying to retreat, but every exit was anticipated. She had calculated their possible routes and had prepared accordingly. Their confidence crumbled completely, replaced by fear and confusion. One by one, they faltered. Some tried to flee, only to find themselves slowed by obstacles she had positioned. Others froze, unsure of where to go or what to do next. She maintained her calm, guiding the situation to a resolution that would protect her home without escalating unnecessarily. The gang had underestimated her, and that mistake had sealed their failure. By the time the first hints of dawn touched the horizon, the confrontation had ended. The intruders had retreated, disorganized and shaken, their confidence destroyed. They had learned the hard way that the quiet single mother of the farm was far from an easy target. She watched from the shadows as they disappeared into the trees, ensuring they were truly gone before allowing herself a moment of relief. Inside the house, her son remained asleep, unaware of the battle that had unfolded just beyond the walls. She allowed herself a small smile, pride swelling in her chest. He was safe. The farm was safe. And she had proven to herself and to anyone who might ever doubt her that strength, skill, and preparation could overcome even the most audacious threats. She spent the next hour quietly inspecting the property, checking for any signs of lingering danger. Everything was as it should be. The fences were intact, the animals were safe, and no one had managed to breach the perimeter. She moved with methodical care, ensuring that the farm remained secure and that her son would never need to witness the confrontation. The world could be dangerous, yes, but she had met that danger head-on and emerged victorious. As the sun climbed higher, casting light across the fields and chasing away the shadows, she allowed herself a moment to breathe. The adrenaline had subsided, leaving a sense of calm satisfaction. She had faced the threat with patience, skill, and courage. She had protected her home and her son, and she had done so without unnecessary harm, maintaining control of every aspect of the situation. Her son woke soon after, stretching and yawning, completely unaware of the events that had transpired. She greeted him with a smile, as though nothing had happened, guiding him through breakfast and morning chores. Life on the farm returned to its familiar rhythm, the calm of routine once more filling the day. But she knew the lesson had been learned. The farm was not just a peaceful sanctuary. It was a place she would defend, skillfully and fiercely, against anyone who underestimated her. Even as she worked, her mind remained alert. The world beyond the property line was unpredictable, and she knew that vigilance was a daily requirement. But she also knew that she was capable. She had faced danger, navigated it, and protected those she loved. The farm, the animals, her son, all were safe because she had acted with precision, patience, and unwavering resolve. By the end of the day, she finally allowed herself a quiet moment on the porch. The sun set in shades of gold and pink, painting the sky with a promise of calm and renewal. She watched the horizon, aware that the world could always bring new challenges, but confident that she was prepared to meet them. She had faced the storm and stood strong, and that strength would continue to guide her, protecting the life she had built, the son she loved, and the farm that had become their sanctuary. The sun rose slowly over the farm the morning after the attempted raid. The air was cool and fresh, carrying the scent of damp earth and grass. Everything seemed peaceful again, almost as if nothing had happened. Yet beneath that calm, there was a ripple of tension and excitement that only she fully understood. She moved about the farm with her usual care, checking the animals, feeding them, and inspecting the fences, but her mind was alert, reflecting on the events of the night before. Her son was already awake, moving quietly around the kitchen, his small hands helping to set the table for breakfast. He was cheerful and curious, asking questions about the day ahead, but she answered them lightly, keeping her tone calm. He did not know about the danger they had faced or the skills she had used to protect them. That knowledge, she thought, was not for him yet. She wanted him to feel safe and unburdened by fear. It had been a long night, but he had slept peacefully, and for that she was grateful. Word spread quickly through the small community. Farmers, neighbors, and even people from nearby towns had heard whispers about what had happened. Some came quietly to her property, hesitant but curious, wanting to see for themselves the place where the gang had been stopped so decisively. They approached with a mix of awe and disbelief. How could a single woman, they wondered, defend herself and her home against a group of intruders? The answer was something they could not fully understand, and it began to stir both admiration and respect. When she stepped outside to check the fences, she noticed a few neighbors watching from the edge of the road. They waved cautiously, not wanting to intrude, but she waved back and smiled, acknowledging their presence. A few of them gathered, exchanging quiet words, clearly trying to understand what had taken place. One man, older and with lines of worry on his face, asked if she was all right, and she reassured him simply, "Everything's fine. We're safe." Her words were calm, but her eyes, sharp and steady, left no doubt that she was serious. The local law enforcement arrived soon after. Officers walked the property carefully, inspecting the ground, the fences, and the areas where the intruders had moved. They asked questions, took notes, and listened to her account of the night. She described what had happened in simple terms, focusing on how she had noticed the movement, prepared for it, and ensured the safety of herself and her son. She did not embellish. She did not boast. The facts alone were impressive. As the officers left, murmuring among themselves about how unusual and fortunate it was that no one had been hurt, the neighbors began to speak more openly. They shared stories they had heard from others, tales of the gang's reputation and the boldness of their attempted intrusion. Each story added to the sense of awe surrounding her actions. She listened quietly, accepting their praise with humility. She did not seek recognition, but she did not deny it either. Her priority had always been protection, not applause. It was during these conversations that her past began to come into focus for the community. A few people had heard rumors over the years, small hints that she had once served in the military, had training beyond what most civilians could imagine. They began to ask hesitantly what she had done before settling on the farm. She answered cautiously, revealing only a small portion at first, enough to explain her confidence and skill, but not enough to reveal everything. Her experience, however, was enough to make people understand why she had been able to protect her home so effectively. The revelation sparked a mixture of surprise and admiration. People who had once seen her as a quiet, unassuming figure now viewed her in a new light. They realized that she was not just a single mother running a farm. She was someone with extraordinary experience, someone who had faced danger and honed skills that most people could only imagine. The knowledge changed the way they interacted with her. Respect replaced casual acquaintance, and there was a subtle shift in the community's perception. Despite the attention, she remained focused on her family. Her son continued his routines, helping with chores, playing outside, and learning from the daily life of the farm. She guided him patiently, teaching him responsibility, awareness, and respect for the world around them. She did not want him to be fearful of the world, only aware and capable. She explained the importance of observation and preparation, but always in terms he could understand, without instilling unnecessary worry. The aftermath of the attempted raid also brought practical changes. She reinforced fences further, checked the security of all entry points, and adjusted areas of the farm that might be vulnerable. She remained alert to any signs of future threats, observing the property carefully and noting any unusual movement or behavior. The community noticed her vigilance and admired it. Some neighbors began taking similar precautions on their own properties, inspired by her example and her calm, methodical approach to safety. Her interactions with law enforcement continued as well, Officers returned occasionally to check in, to provide advice, and to offer support. They respected her knowledge and skill, recognizing that she had handled the situation better than anyone could have expected. Her calm explanations, precise observations, and thoughtful actions impressed even experienced officers. She did not boast about her capabilities. She simply applied them as needed, quietly demonstrating the value of preparation, awareness, and skill. In the evenings, she took time to reflect on what had happened. Sitting on the porch with her son nearby, she watched the sunset and considered the events of the past few days. The adrenaline had faded, leaving a sense of quiet pride. She had faced danger, protected her family, and maintained control over the situation. The farm remained safe, and her son remained unaware of the full extent of the threat, which was exactly how it should be. She allowed herself a moment of satisfaction, knowing that she had fulfilled her responsibilities with skill and courage. The community's respect for her grew steadily. People began to approach her more openly, seeking advice on safety, security, and preparedness. They listened to her words, observed her actions, and sometimes asked for demonstrations of practical skills that could be applied to their own lives. She shared knowledge carefully, emphasizing awareness, observation, and planning rather than aggression. Her goal was always to empower others, to help them protect themselves without fear, and to encourage self-reliance. At the same time, she maintained the balance of her daily life. The farm continued to demand attention and care, and she remained dedicated to her son's education and well-being. Lessons were taught through both words and example, emphasizing responsibility, resilience, and independence. Every task, from feeding animals to repairing fences, carried an underlying message about focus, diligence, and practical skill. Her son absorbed these lessons naturally, learning not only about farm work but also about confidence, awareness, and courage. Occasionally, she allowed herself small moments of personal reflection. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the years of training, the challenges she had faced, and the resilience she had developed. She considered how her experiences had shaped her ability to protect her family and her home. These reflections were quiet and private, moments of understanding the strength she possessed and the responsibility that came with it. She did not dwell on past danger. Instead, she acknowledged it as a part of the skills and wisdom she carried into her present life. The farm itself seemed to respond to the renewed sense of security. Animals moved with calm assurance. The garden thrived under her careful attention, and the fields remained orderly and well-tended. There was a harmony to the daily routines, a rhythm that reinforced the sense of stability and safety. Even as the world beyond the property line remained unpredictable, the farm became a sanctuary, a place where life could continue with both awareness and peace. Neighbors began to involve her more in the community. They respected her knowledge and experience, often seeking guidance on how to improve their own properties, protect their families, and respond to emergencies. She offered advice quietly and thoughtfully, never demanding attention but always providing it when asked. Her presence became a reassuring one, a reminder that preparedness, skill, and calm decision-making could overcome fear and uncertainty. Through it all, she remained humble. She did not seek recognition or admiration. Her focus remained on her son, the farm, and the practical aspects of maintaining both. Yet even without seeking attention, she became a figure of respect and admiration. People saw her not just as a single mother, but as a capable, intelligent, and strong individual who had faced danger and protected what mattered most with courage and skill. Evenings on the farm became a time of reflection and quiet connection. She and her son would sit together, sometimes talking about the day, sometimes simply watching the sky change colors as the sun set. These moments were simple but powerful, reinforcing the bond between them and the sense of security she worked so hard to maintain. Life continued, steady and reassuring, with the lessons of vigilance, courage, and resilience woven naturally into each day. The gang had left, humiliated and defeated, but the story of that night became part of the community's collective memory. It was told quietly at first, then more openly as a tale of courage, preparedness, and the extraordinary capabilities of someone who appeared ordinary at first glance. She accepted the story with quiet dignity, never exaggerating, never claiming more than the truth. The tale itself inspired others, not through fear, but through respect and understanding of what careful observation, preparation and calm action could achieve. Through all of this, her focus remained on the life she had built. The farm, her son, and the small community around her were her world, and she nurtured them with care, skill, and unwavering attention. Danger had come and been repelled, but the lessons of vigilance, preparation, and calm decision-making were ongoing. Each day brought new tasks, new opportunities to teach, guide, and protect. And through it all, she remained quietly confident, aware that her skills, experience, and resilience would always guide her through any challenge that might come. The days following the confrontation passed with a quiet rhythm. Though the air of the farm had changed subtly, there was a sense of accomplishment, of survival, of life continuing despite the threat that had appeared. She moved through her routines with a careful balance of vigilance and calm, feeding the animals, tending the garden, repairing fences. Each task was familiar, comforting, and necessary. But now, with the gang gone for good, there was a deeper layer of confidence and satisfaction in her every action. Her son noticed the difference immediately. He could see the calm in her movements, the ease in her smile, and the assurance in her words. "Are we really safe now?" he asked one morning as they collected eggs from the coop. She knelt beside him, adjusting his small hands as he carefully carried a basket of eggs. "Yes," she said softly, her voice steady. "We're safe. Nothing can reach us if we stay aware and take care of our home." He nodded, trusting her entirely, as he had always done. She cherished his trust. It was something she had fought hard to maintain, and now more than ever she knew it was deserved. Neighbors began to stop by more often, bringing small gifts, sharing advice, or simply checking in. They no longer saw her as just the quiet woman who lived alone on a small farm. They had learned the truth, that she was someone capable, skilled, and courageous. Their respect was visible in the way they greeted her, the way they sought her guidance, and in the quiet admiration that lingered in conversations long after she had left. It was a different kind of connection, one built not on casual acquaintance but on awareness of the strength she carried. Despite the attention, she remained focused on her priorities. Her son's education and well-being were always at the forefront of her mind. She taught him practical skills alongside life lessons: how to care for animals, how to work the soil, how to observe the world carefully, and how to act decisively when necessary. But she also taught him kindness, patience, and empathy. She wanted him to be strong, yes, but also compassionate. The balance of toughness and care was something she understood deeply, and she worked tirelessly to instill it in him. The farm itself flourished under her attention. The garden produced vegetables that were plump and healthy, the animals were calm and well-fed, and the fields showed signs of careful planning and hard work. Everything reflected her care and vigilance. Life had returned to a peaceful routine, but it was a peace earned through effort and courage, a peace that carried the subtle reminder that safety was not accidental. It was deliberate. She had built it, maintained it, and would continue to protect it. One morning, she received a surprise visit from a group of neighbors she had not seen in a while. They approached cautiously, carrying a few supplies and tools as if they were offering something of practical value rather than just goodwill. "We wanted to make sure you had what you need," one said, his tone respectful and sincere. She smiled, grateful for the gesture but careful not to draw unnecessary attention to herself. "Thank you," she said simply. "Everything's fine, but I appreciate it." They lingered for a moment, talking about small matters, the weather, the crops, the general life of the farm. But underneath the conversation was an acknowledgement of the events that had transpired, a quiet recognition of her strength and resilience. She listened and responded with calm composure, aware of the impact she had made on those around her. Respect had been earned, not demanded, and she accepted it with humility. Her son remained unaware of the full extent of the danger they had faced. She preferred it that way. He saw only the calm, confident woman who managed the farm, guided him in his chores, and kept their lives running smoothly. He trusted her completely, and she took care to protect that trust. The innocence of childhood was precious, and she guarded it carefully. She knew that one day he would understand the lessons of vigilance and courage, but for now he needed only to feel safe and supported. As the weeks passed, life on the farm settled into a satisfying routine. She and her son worked together from morning to night, tending to the animals, repairing fences, maintaining the garden, and keeping the property secure. The rhythm of work was comforting, providing a sense of purpose and achievement. Every task completed was a reminder of their independence, their resilience, and their ability to thrive despite challenges. The gang had not returned. Their absence was a relief, but she remained aware. She continued to observe the property carefully, noting any unusual signs or movements, maintaining a readiness that had become second nature. Awareness was not fear, it was preparation. It was the understanding that the world could bring challenges at any moment, and the knowledge that one must always be ready to meet them with calm, deliberate action. Her community continued to respond positively to her example. People began to take more care in their own homes and farms, inspired by her vigilance and skill. Some sought advice on security, observation, and preparation. She offered guidance when appropriate, always emphasizing awareness, planning, and thoughtful action over unnecessary aggression. Her experience and knowledge became a resource not only for herself and HOA